Thanks very much for inviting me to contribute to the 5th Annual Women's Empowerment Principles event. I'm very sorry that I'm unable to be with you in person this year. In my remarks, I would like to offer a perspective on how gender and generation matter. The research I'm referring to has recently been published in a book called Rising Stars, Developing Millennial Women as Leaders. It includes an excellent foreword by Ian Powell, Chairman and Senior Partner of PwC UK. He outlines why business leaders should care about the latest entrants into the workplace. I respond to this challenge by looking at how inclusive leaders, men as well as women, can be developed when we pay attention to generation and gender. The latest generation to enter the workplace is called the Millennials, or Generation Y. So who is a millennial? In my research, I define millennials as those born after 1977. So I'm largely talking about those people in their 20s and early 30s. A generation can also be defined based on critical developmental experiences that people make when they were in their formative years. For millennials, those advances in technology, as well as the economic crisis, are key developmental experiences that shape their attitudes and behaviors. Research has found that the average millennial is more confident and yet more anxious than previous generations. Millennials also rate leisure time as well as financial compensation higher than previous generations. Above all, millennials want to enjoy their life now. Organizations are already noticing that this generation is less likely to put up with non-sustainable working practices, such as a long hours culture. From a gender perspective, this is important because in this generation, the demands for better work-life integration will not only come from women seeking to combine family and a career. They're also going to come from men who want to be involved fathers. The importance of gender for this generation, however, extends beyond the shared wish for sustainable working practices. Research has shown that millennial women are as confident as their male counterparts, and they do want to lead. This creates a golden opportunity to change leadership in our organizations. While millennial women are confident and aspire to leadership, research also shows that millennial women have more self-doubt about their own performance. More importantly, millennial women often do not see gender inequality as an important issue for them. They believe that gender equality has already been achieved. This is problematic because millennial women might confront gender inequality in their lives. Rather than seeing gender inequality as systematic, many millennial women are likely to search for faults in themselves rather than seeing their experience as due to societal structures. We have a generation of women that want to lead. However, disguised gender discrimination might eat away this motivation. It is therefore important that millennial women learn to deal with the residues of gender discrimination to unfold their leadership potential. And we need to set the course for this now. Today's leaders need to better understand how to harness the potential that this generation brings to the workplace. If we tackle some of the critical points today, we will have a generation of leaders, male and female, that will truly understand the importance of gender equality for business. The millennials can create cultures where gender equality is business as usual. Thank you very much, and I wish you an inspiring conference.
This work is so important because in many countries now, half the workforce or more is millennials. So that we're dealing with not just a few people, but a really urgent problem. So we're going to do this panel on gender and generation, redefining organizational culture and leadership. And I invite the members of the panel to come forward, please. I've met some of you, but not all of you. Let's see if I can do this easily. Hello, how are you? We have one gentleman who's a member of the panel. That's easy. You know, usually you can't figure out the women.
Gentleman's one who's late.
Yeah, you are. Glad to have you. All right. You okay? All right, well, thank you very much. Based on really rising out of the research that Elisabeth Kelan has done in London, we have asked all of these panelists to address the issues from their own country and company perspective in terms of the millennial generation and what this means for the ultimate goal of women's empowerment and equality. So I'd like to say that all of their bios, they are extensive careers, and their bios are in your packet. So I am just going to do the quick introduction of who they are and where they come from, as opposed to giving a long sort of career path discussion for you. So first we're going to hear from Mr. Bhushan Sethi. He is People and Change Practice Lead for Financial Services, New York, PwC, US. Go ahead.
Good morning, everyone. It's a real honor to be here today to talk about a very important topic. For us at PwC, this is very important. The research that Elisabeth has done and talked about millennials is something we're using a lot in our own organization. 50% of our workforce are women. By 2016, 80% of our population globally will be millennials. So this is a big issue that we need to solve for. It's also a big issue for our clients. Our clients need to solve this issue. I spend my time consulting financial services in financial institutions. So what we're seeing there, interesting enough, is there's a big business case. There's a business case around making this work. So we talk about the CEOs that were mentioned earlier in Australia. That's incredibly important. The CEOs are not doing this as a check the box or as a something that's very altruistic. There's money to be made. There's money to be made when you've got a financial advisor in mainland China advising ultra high net worth individuals because she's the top financial advisor in her private bank. That's a real life example. There are a number of examples where it actually makes real business sense. So I think we need to get away from the conversations around equality and quotas and doing the right thing to actually looking at the business imperative. That's one thing that we're doing with our clients and we're doing as an organization. The second thing is organizations do need to change. So whether it's the current ways that they administer performance management, so how they rate people, and they rate people based on financial performance, and thinking about some of the other values, collaboration and how work gets done, that's incredibly important. Also, putting the issue on the table. Organizations, starting with leaders, need to do a better job of actually talking about where we are losing market share, where we are losing potential clients, because clients are actually demanding this. So organizations are needing to change themselves. One thing we've done in the UK out of PwC is taken every leader through gender bias training. That was actually incredibly important for people to actually look at some of the unconscious biases. The third thing is the millennial generation, and we're talking about women today, the millennial generation and the millennial women and the leaders of the future need to also put this issue on the table. It was very refreshing today that there was some diversity of thought amongst the earlier speakers. There was a thought around this being a CEO issue, and there's a thought about men can't change. I'm paraphrasing. Men can't change, let's do it ourselves. That's what needs to happen. That millennial women need to put the issue on the table, need to speak up where they're not getting the development opportunities, need to speak up about articulating the business case, and to be very transparent, knowing that certain industries, it's going to be too difficult to change, and actually focus on certain other areas. I spent some time in China earlier this year, working with a number of banks and looking at those corporations. The role of women and the millennial women in those organizations was terrible. When I actually met some Chinese women entrepreneurs of a similar generation, they were having a great experience. So again, it's picking your battles. The final point around all of this is, and as mentioned earlier, this is an issue that's not just today's issue, this is going to be a bigger issue going forward. So whether it's the increasing number of women from societies where they're not used to working, when we think about the Middle East and we think about pockets of India and other parts of Far East Asia, there are more and more women entering the workforce. There are more and more women who are going to have to work in metropolitan cities like New York just to make ends meet. We see this as being a big issue that needs to be solved. So the final point around this is when we think about a future and we think about a workforce that's going to be, the millennial generation are going to have many more careers and many more employees than we have. There's going to be much more flexibility in that workforce. There's going to be much more temporary work as we see going forward in all industries. The role of women and millennials to be able to adapt, I think that they actually have more an advantage than some of their colleagues beforehand.
Thank you very much. I think we'll come back to some of the points that you made. I'm sure people will be interested in the gender bias training, for example, which hasn't come up so far today. I did want to call the attention of the panelists to my assistant here, who puts the sign up when it says your time is getting near, and to wrap up. So I really appreciate the cooperation. So I'd like to introduce Kimie Iwata, advisor and former, let me find you here, former representative director and vice president of Shiseido in Japan, and we're very pleased to have you here today.
May I use the PowerPoint?
Yes.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen.
Good morning.
The next slide, please. Yes, this is Shiseido at a glance. We are a cosmetic company with its origin in Japan, with 47,000 people working in 89 countries. Oops. And we remade our mission, values, and way to be shared by all employees worldwide. One of our missions is in diversity, the first one, in diversity strength. We believe diversity is critical to make our company stronger. And this is the start of redefining our corporate culture. And we can divide our women's development stages into three. Yes. In the first stage, most women left after having a baby. So we introduced various programs to support our working parents so that they didn't have to leave the job. Thanks to those supporting programs, most women stayed on the job but were barely managing job and family because of long working hours. So we started to discourage long work hours and encourage work-life balance for all employees while increasing productivity. We are now in the third stage where men and women can advance the career while managing the job and family. Throughout all these stages, the most challenging aspect of this effort is how to influence mindset of men and women and develop a culture of diversity and inclusion. We believe commitment of top management set the tone of cultural change and is a key to success. To change women's mindset, we started to offer career forum where corporate officers talk about their own career and life directly with the women employees. And this encourages women. And to change male managers, talent management system, senior executives encourage middle managers to identify women talent and develop them. And our remaining challenge is how we can increase the number of women in upper management positions. To realize this quickly, we think equal opportunity is not enough. We need positive action. The next slide, please. The number of women in leadership positions increased in the last decade in Shiseido, Japan. Please skip the 2 pages. The next one, yes. And we increased during the last decade to about 23% today in Shiseido, Japan, while this ratio is very high compared to that of the average Japanese company. We are definitely ahead of the other Japanese companies, but if we compare it with our overseas subsidiaries in our group, there is still, we have a way to go. We set a numerical goal of increasing the ratio of female leaders inside Japan to 30% by the end of the fiscal 2013. To attain this goal, we are executing the Gender Equality Action Plan, including an individual personnel development plan for female leader candidates. And so far, I have not mentioned about generation. So before I close my speech, I will refer to generation issue in Japan. Not only Shiseido, but also many other Japanese firms have this kind of age pyramid of employees. Yes, this one. And Japan is free of the problem of millennium in terms of population size. On the other hand, the dominant generation Japanese companies is the people in their 40s and older. From the viewpoint of generation difference, 1986, when the Equal Employment Opportunity Law was enforced, is a critical year. So there were very few female directors, executives in the generation of late 40s and older who entered the companies before the enforcement of the law. And on the other hand, the female employees in their 20s, 30s, and early 40s, they have more a potential to become managers and executives. The last, another and last generation issue is, like many other Japanese firms, Shiseido has a life employment practice, and we recruit employees mainly from the new graduates, and the number of the new graduates employed depends on the economic situation of the company in the corresponding year. So you see the number of employees in the early 20s and in the middle 30s, they are very small because at the time of their recruitment, the company was in the economic stagnation. So this distorted age structure of employees could be a problematic in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I think that your point, and she did move away from the chart just to be sure everyone could hear her, of the average in Japan was 8%. Their average now in Japan for the women managers is about 30%, but outside of Japan, it was close to 50%. So they're working in a very, you might say, a very tough environment and making very good progress. So thank you very much. Muia Joynson-Romanzina. We're pleased to have you here, head of the Global Diversity Division and Inclusion for Swiss Reinsurance Company. And I believe you have PowerPoint as well?
Yeah, I actually hate PowerPoints. Can you hear me? Yeah. I hate PowerPoints, but there's a few visuals that I wanted to share with you that'll help. Yeah? You can't hear?
Do you want the handheld mic?
Yeah, that's fine. I can have the... Oh, that's better now, right? Okay, good. So I have some PowerPoints with me. I hate them. I just want to use them to visualize some of the ideas that I want to share with you. So we've heard this morning about how do we bring men on board? And my question is, how do we bring men and women on board together on the question of diversity and inclusion within organizations, within corporations? So I'm going to speak a little bit about the journey that we're still on, because there is not a silver bullet yet. We're all looking for it. That's why we're here. But this is the journey that we are on, because I'm based in Zurich in Switzerland. And in Switzerland, the term diversity automatically equals women. Actually, there are companies in Switzerland that have diversity in their titles, and they purely deal with the women's issue. In fact, if you come to the US, it frequently equates to ethnicity and race. Different parts of the world, diversity is equated with different social demographic groups. And one of the things that I believe is that we have to smash this linkage between diversity and social demographic groups. It's about inclusion, it's about inclusivity. It's about creating a sense of us, but each individual within this group of us. So it's about how do I tap into each individual so that they feel that the diversity journey speaks to them individually. So if we can go to the second slide, this is a vision. Oh, that's not very pretty. But if you can see the iceberg behind, that for me is what diversity is all about. Ultimately, it's about diversity of thought and opinion, And diversity of thought and opinion is a combination of visible and invisible diversity. Visible diversity clearly talks to social demographic groups and beyond, but the invisible piece talks to each facet that makes each one of us the individual that we are today. So when we talk about diversity, it's about grabbing all those special pieces that each one of us has that makes each one of us individual, and that we can be respected, that we feel heard and listened to, and that we can be open, and our thoughts are brought to the table. And that talks to all of us. It crosses generations, it crosses race and ethnicity, and it crosses gender. So how are we doing this? I just want to give you this view of where we're going on this inclusion journey. We're calling it the Global Inclusion Framework. So if we can go on to the next slide. So the goal is an inclusive culture and truly diverse workforce, an invisible and with invisible and visible diversity that crosses regions, levels, functions. And we have 3 pillars to our global strategy. The first one is inclusive leadership. Leadership drives culture. So if we have leaders who are inclusive, this will lead us to an inclusive culture. But what I've discovered is people don't automatically know what inclusive means. I hoped that I would be able to co-create with our leaders what being inclusive means. I was wrong. So I came up with a competency framework, our inclusive leadership competency framework, which is embedded in our behaviors for our leaders that most companies have, right? And it's linked then into performance management. So there's accountability there. But now our leaders know what it means to be inclusive. It's not rocket science, but they need to have it spelt out so they have something to grab onto. We also then have training on unconscious bias there. Very quickly, the other 2 pillars. The second one for me is fundamental, and it's about addressing the workplace. Because we have to change the house in order to allow both genders in. So we have a group-wide global initiative, a cultural change initiative, that addresses people's ability and autonomy to shape how, when, and where they work. So this is about smashing these traditional work models and traditional career paths, which traditionally have been the only way in which people can be successful in corporations. So that no matter how you work, no matter what your working model is, no matter what your career path is, whether it's lattice, whether you put your foot on or off the accelerator, you can still be successful. The third pillar is gender diversity. So as you see, all 3 pillars are inclusive. We do not target one single social demographic group. And in gender diversity, we're addressing both genders. So we want to improve gender balance of both genders in functions, regions, and businesses and levels throughout the company. And we do have one piece there which is focused on women in leadership, because for us that is one area that we focus on. But we're also talking about gender intelligence, about embracing and harnessing the gender differences, understanding them, because I tell you what, most of the men just don't understand the differences. Why would they? Most of them haven't worked with women leaders. They have no clue. And actually a lot of them are very, very, very willing to learn, and they're interested. So this is our journey on trying to build a more inclusive culture. And hopefully in 3-4 years' time, you know, the time that you need for cultural change, I can come back with some positive results.
That would be great.
Nice.
Thank you. I think this is a wise change in our conversation about inclusion, not just diversity, but inclusion. And we're really spending a good bit of time already talking about culture change, which came up yesterday in the panel that the Swiss mission and the Australian mission put on. So I think we'll come back to that several times during the day today. Let me introduce Mary. Say you. Mary Waceke, Muia?
Yes, Muia.
Muia, thank you. We had a chance to talk yesterday. I'd like to just call you Mary. That would make it even
Thank
better. As with Human Resources Performance and Change Manager with Kenya Electricity.
Thank you very much. Thank you. My name is Mary Waceke, as you have heard, and you can call me Mary. It is easier to pronounce, definitely. I will also use my PowerPoint. I work for Kenya Electricity Generating Company in Kenya. I'm a mechanical engineer by training. And having worked within the energy sector for several years, and of course encountering the fact that we don't have enough women in science and technology coming in, and also the fact that the organizations are focusing on the universities, but that is at the end. That is not where to focus. We should focus at the root, that is the beginning or the foundation, primary school, secondary school, then to the universities. Because by the time the girls get to the universities, they've already made up their minds. They've already picked social sciences or whichever other subjects. But at an early age, if you motivate them to take science subjects and show them the benefits of sciences, then they will be able to progress through and the pipeline will be full. We to see the more water coming out if there is none which is being pumped from the beginning. I'm also involved with Women on the Board initiatives in Kenya, where we are actually promoting and creating awareness much more in terms of diversity at the board level, not only in terms of gender, but also in terms of age. Because when you look at the age profile of our boards, we tend to then to be on the other side of the baby boomers. We are not looking at the fact that we've got talent, and the millennials are people who are actually actualizing themselves earlier than our parents and our grandparents did. Could I see my slides? Do we have them? Okay. What we are saying is that we have achieved a lot in web, but we just can't sit there. We are saying that even if you're on the right track, you will get run over if you just sit there. What we should be asking ourselves, yes, a lot has been achieved since 1946 with the CSW, but is the dial moving? Because the context and the environment is changing very quickly. So if we continue addressing the women and the gender issues using the old context that we have had for so long, are we really going to be measuring the right measure? Next slide. So when you're saying that we all have aspirations, of course you recognize these women. Wangari Maathai from Kenya, of course she's late. She was a Nobel Peace Laureate. Of course you have the Oprah, and the other time, the Times Magazine called Hillary Clinton one of the most powerful women. And we see the young Kenyan girl there saying that when I grow up, this is what I want to be. We are looking for equal opportunity for all to realize their potential. We tend to imagine that the gender agenda is women looking for favors. They are not looking for favors. They are looking for a felt, fair environment. The next slide. So today, the woman today is at the crossroad because she wants to be a superwoman and at the same time to balance all these other things that are there. So she is wondering, I've been defined by the society and I want to define myself. And when you look at the millennial woman, this is a woman who is very self-aware, who wants to live their life really as an expression of themselves and to bring value very quickly. But we are constrained very much by the issues of the society and the cultural issues and other long-held beliefs that are keeping us from being who we really want to be and to bring value to the society. So what are we saying? My last slide. The answer is to challenge and support the gender issue and the woman at the same time. That is to challenge her, first of all, in terms of getting rid of unconscious bias. At the same time, to support. You know, when we talk about daycare centers in a workplace or a support system for mothers, we think it's a nice to have, or it's a nice cliche or a nice slogan to have. It is not a slogan. It's a credible voice that says it's a must-have. So it is not a nice to have. It's not a fashion. It is really a fundamental and a basic requirement for employers and institutions to build these supportive facilities to allow the women to progress and to express themselves. Thank you.
So no more favors. We're looking to realize the dreams of those girls, and no more favors. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Well, we have a two-part presentation now, and frankly, I don't know who's first. Are you first, Maureen? Maureen Kilgour is Associate Professor of the University of St. Boniface, co-chair of the Gender Working Group on the Principles for Responsible Management Education. She is from Canada, and her colleague, who will be coming along right with her in a second, is Ms. Catherine Haynes, Dr. Catherine Haynes, who's the Northern Society Chair in Accounting, Newcastle University Business School, principal, same organization, from the UK. And for those of you who were here other years, we heard for the first time about this work, which is really to incorporate many of these principles in our discussion in the business education. You know, those leaders we're talking about who are in place already, most of them went to a business school. And so this is a very important way to begin to change culture. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. The UN Principles for Responsible Management Education have already been mentioned briefly. Thank you for that. That's an initiative that grew out of the United Nations Global Compact, and it was established to inspire and champion responsible management education. The executive director, or the head honcho, is Jonas Hartel. He's over there. Hey, Jonas, you want to wave? So he's been very, very supportive of our work and all of the work. He's an incredible motivator for management education. So I'm one of the co-facilitators, along with my colleague Catherine and Pat Flynn from Bentley University, of the Gender Equality Working Group, which was launched following the launch of the Women Equality Working Group to support the Women's Empowerment Principles. Our goal is to promote the integration of gender equality and gender issues into management education. We're talking predominantly about business schools. Like the rest of the world, business schools are very male-dominated, going from like the percentage of women teaching in business schools to the culture to the number of students that are entering business schools. So we have a huge sort of gender inequality issue in management education around the world. And that's where the link with organizational culture change comes in. So it's not a small challenge like what many of you are facing in your workplaces. In the first year of our initiative, our main achievement was to assemble an international team of very highly motivated volunteers from countries, 16 or 17 countries. We launched a gender resource repository, which addresses a range of disciplines which are taught in business schools: accounting, finance, operations, research, human resource management, diversity management, etc. That resource repository with case studies, syllabi, links, reports, it's available. It's open access. It's available on the website of the WEPS and of PRIME, the Responsible Management Education Initiative. And that's available to all of you who are doing work in your organizations too, if you're looking for particular information. What's really important about our initiative is we've brought awareness of the women's empowerment principles to the management educators, even those who have done a lot of work on gender, but were unaware of this type of project. What I want to leave you with before I pass over to my colleague Catherine is that many students can graduate from university, from a management education program, without having an idea of how gender shapes their life, shapes the workplace, shapes their area of studies. And that's really our goal, is to transform the organizational culture of business schools, of management education, to make sure that that doesn't happen anymore. I have a number of students who come to me when I talk about gender issues in all of my courses, and they say, why hasn't anyone told us this before? And that's sort of horrible when you get a 20-year-old who says that. So I just want to leave you with some key points that I think are a good crossover bridge between the university sector and the business community. The first of all is all disciplines require a gender lens. In all areas of business operations, all disciplines that we teach in management education. Second is the importance of capacity building. It has to be constant. The third point is the focus on empowerment. In our work, we're trying to empower researchers, students, faculty members, male and females, with the tools, resources, and the courage to address gender equality in their own areas. The fourth point is the importance of diffusion and dissemination of ideas. And each of us here in our work as professors, in all of your work as advocates in your organizations, we can't assume that people get gender inequality or that people understand gender. Partnerships are really important, so this is my short, brief ad. At the back on the table, there's an opportunity for partnership with one of the firms here who want to support our group, and we're open to any partnership possibilities, case studies, etc. So please contact either of us. And then finally, because we're educators, we're very highly motivated and passionate about education, and we believe in the transformative power of education. All of you who are here also believe in that because you're here either to be educated yourself or to go back and educate people in your workplace, some of the things we've heard here. Just in closing, on my way to New York, I was listening to a radio interview of a Canadian journalist who talked about a girl she met in a village in Senegal. And this girl, by virtue of being educated, she went to the local school and got into the high school. And it was only at that point she learned that not all women or girls in the world are genitally mutilated. So, and she right away assembled a group of girls in her village and they went to the chief. And I think that is a really sort of brief baby step, but it just shows how important education is. So I'm going to pass it on to Catherine.
Thank you. Catherine, if you could shorten it just a little bit, we'd appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, Maureen, for that. Just to follow up on a few points, to give some examples to flesh out what Maureen's been talking about. Gender equality is a fundamental human rights issue, which we're all aware of. But addressing this in management education, as an accounting educator and a member of a profession, I see the role of the professions as being key to driving gender equality. While professional firms such as PwC and Deloitte, who we've met here, are business leaders in their own right, the professions with their ethical codes and standards have a responsibility to drive gender equality, work in the public interest to maintain human rights. And so I suppose what we'd like to see as management educators is the professionals we're educating going on into the workplace to work with clients on gender equality issues, not just in women in leadership positions, but in the global supply chain. So it's affecting women in not just in the global north, but in the global south in terms of empowerment. And the second issue is the power of education. Maureen's already said what we're trying to do as responsible management educators, but we need to also change what we are educating. So when I teach accounting, for example, I'm teaching that accounting is not a gender-neutral activity, because what we measure affects our opinions of companies and their performance. So we need to be measuring different things. We need to be measuring social impacts, environmental impacts, and the impact on women, as I've said, in the supply chain. These are all drivers for change. The third area is the power of research in highlighting the potential means and outcomes for cultural change on gender equality. And so I've got a plug as well. I want to draw your attention to a call for a book which Prime are offering on gender equality and management education. And we hope that some of you will contribute to this important initiative, because we'll want to hear from you about best practices and innovations in your organisations that we can use in the educational context. If we integrate business, education and research, we have the power to affect cultural change and transformation.
Thank you very much.